Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is death and evolution. And I know death is one of those topics that we might tend to avoid, but maybe it's essential to our evolution and change, whether it's figurative or literal. So let's have that conversation. Should be fun. But before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs and flowing into your bloodstream and nourishing all your cells, all your organs, and bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells and your molecules and your electrons, and creating this brilliant beam of light from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's just gently press our palms together and very softly rub your fingers against your palms to feel the deliciousness of that sensation, the tickling, the tingling, and allow that sensation to bring you present right here, right now, to these remarkable physical forms that enable you to experience life. So welcome, welcome, welcome. It's always wonderful to be here with you. And good morning, Rosalind. So good to have you here with us. Welcome. So today we're talking about immortality and, death as an essential part of the evolutionary process. So this conversation is prompted by a video that a friend sent me that I was watching this morning, and very interesting. It was about technology. They were talking about having in development. This is a wild out there conversation, so bear with me, but it was about an off-planet technology that would revitalize and rejuvenate us so that at any age we could go into this device and be reconditioned into a new form of being, like into a rejuvenated, revitalized, perfected version of our earlier selves. In other words, that we could overcome the aging process and live for thousands of years in a vital and almost ageless form. And they talked about saving lives. And I here's what I'm thinking about that. It's an interest in, like whether this is existing or not, I'm not even going there, but I am wanting to talk about what would the implications of that be. And so when we look at humanity, I'm going to reference again the conversation I had with Elizabeth Sartoris, who's an evolution biologist, talking about cultures going through, not just cultures, but all life forms going through these processes of evolution, from competition and hostilities and acquisition kind of mindset to cooperation. And in the context of that conversation, we're in our adolescence, like we haven't gotten there yet. This is the transition we're called to make, is to make the transition from competition to cooperation, from domination and control to collaboration and community. But the thing is, what would it be like if every human on this planet could live forever, given so many of our contemporary beliefs and ideas and our shall we say, less than evolved consciousness about how to live cooperatively, how to nurture and nourish ourselves, each other, and our planet and nature. So, I think it in that context, in thinking about that, it made me start looking at the gift that death is, for our species and our planet, that we don't live forever. Because look at what I see as the way that we have the ability to evolve is that old ideas die off with the people that carry them. Admittedly, we pass down a lot of ideas that are antiquated, but I mean, just play with me here as a mind experiment. What would it be like if the people who are currently in power that are representative of this old paradigm of conquest and domination, what if they lived forever? What would that be? It would be perpetuating these ideas and these notions about how we survive and function on the planet, right? And so, I think about this in a personal perspective as well as a universal perspective, like microcosm, macrocosm. If we didn't have these evolutions in our own lives, if we didn't have our old ideas die essentially, or pass away in our own evolution, where um, we move beyond our past ideas, and even our maybe some of our identities that we had, we shed these identities as we evolve. I think it's the same thing with life and death. Like if we were awake all the time, if we didn't get to sleep, like sleep is a respite, sleep is kind of a way to be able to reset, to put some kind of closure on one day and then wake into a new day and a new possibility. And I see that with the cycle of life and death as well. So, if we didn't get to sleep, there would be this continuity. Let's say we could survive without sleep. There would be this continuity that didn't allow for the new perspective, the new approach. So Rosalind says, in this context, the key to being at peace and in control starts with boundaries. Without boundaries in place, it leaves self open to the demands and whims of others and a disempowered sense of being. So boundaries. So when we're talking about boundaries, this is, I wouldn't have thought of it that way, but I can see what you're talking about in terms of being able to go to sleep. Like that's a boundary. It's bounding one day, for instance, and then wake up with a new, fresh perspective, right? Or potentially anyway, to start over. So Angelina, welcome. So good to have you here with us. And Rosalind, I know I said so, but it's always good to have you here with us as well. You're such a loyal participant and an important contributor to our conversations every day. I'm just really grateful and want to acknowledge you for that. So Angelina says, I just meditated this morning and essentially my guidance system completely shifted, saying I had outgrown them. And essentially it was time to make room for the new. So this definitely makes sense for me this morning. That's beautiful. That's what I love, those kinds of synchronicities, Angelina. Thanks for sharing that. And yes, so we do have these moments of evolutionary grace, let's call it, in our lives. But I don't know that that's something that happens for everyone in a reliable way. And if we look at our systems, in order to be transforming and move into our new space, a new space of concept and awareness, I don't know that immortality would serve us. Perhaps if we knew that we were immortal, maybe we'd have greater care. um, I wonder about that. And I also look at, if we were immortal, would we be creating new life on this planet? Would we still be birthing children? What would it be like to be in that perfected physical state? Would it transform our consciousness? I just see that there is a grander function to death, in that it creates that break, it creates that transition and that transformation, and it creates space for more change and transformation, I would think, of the greater whole. I'm wondering what you think about that. So Rosalind says, realize too that boundaries change. What serves you one month may need to change the next. Exactly. And the thing is that if we look at, our culture has changed profoundly over the past 50 years, let alone 100 years, in terms of technology and what we've done to the planet, what we've done to the environment. Just in the past 50 years, we've made it almost uninhabitable, or at least the last 100 years. And so the question is, would longer life be something that would serve us in, maybe in solving the planetary problems? Maybe I see more than one side to this conversation for sure, but I think it's a really interesting thing to ponder. So Angelina says, I've never been here, so we are so glad to have you. And she says, and good morning, you popped on after I meditated, so I figured I'd check you out. Well, we have these kinds of crazy conversations every morning, Angelina, so I hope you join us regularly. We'd look at, this one's a bit more out of the box in a way, because we're talking about immortality, and we do, I do believe that our consciousness is not bounded by our physical form. And I'm not saying this is true, it's just my hypothesis, but our consciousness isn't bounded by our physical form, and it doesn't die, that it gets re-embodied in all different ways. But I wonder, in the state of consciousness that humanity as a whole has, what would it be to be immortal? What might we be doing to the planet if we could, or the cosmos, if we lived forever? Because I don't know, I don't yet have confidence in the maturity of the morality of humanity to be able to be here thousands of years in a conscious and responsible way. What am I'm curious about what you think. So good morning, Elaine. So good to have you here with us, as always. Welcome. We're talking about the death as part of an evolutionary process that allows us to make change of culture and awareness and consciousness more quickly, kind of like clearing out the old guard so that there's room for new possibility. And Angelina says, I agree that death is a gift. It gives the opportunity for growth and insight. It also allows for growth of humanity. When things are assumed like life, it makes room for stagnation for sure. I'm personally grateful for the opportunity to thrive in this moment and allow for others to grow. And Angelina, that's as beautiful. And I really do believe that death, if we think about how important and regenerative sleep is, if we can look at death as that break, that transition, that opportunity to start anew, to generate new possibilities, new ideas, to clear out the old guard kind of thing, it can make it can be a powerful element of evolution and transformation. And even our personal deaths that we experience throughout our lives of our old ideas, our old ways of being. So Angelina says, essentially, if I'm here for thousands of years, I wonder if that would interfere with the development of universal consciousness. I wonder about the same thing, Angelina. So at the same, on one hand, I can see where definitely we want to be clearing out the old, and death keeps that wheel turning more quickly. On the other hand, there is something to be said for wisdom. And I notice, certainly as I've gotten older, as I've experienced more life, as I've asked more questions and observed more, hopefully I have a greater sense of wisdom. And maybe that wisdom over hundreds or thousands of years would move us into, maybe that would move culture more quickly. I don't know, because I know that right now on the planet there are many people that embody ideas, beliefs, commitments, and I'm not saying I have a handle on the right ones, air quotes around that or anything like that, but there are many people in power who are very much oriented to power, domination, control, and that is something that needs to shift on this planet. We get to evolve if we're going to thrive on this planet. We get to evolve from conflict and competition to collaboration, community, and cooperation. And so these are ideas that are making more sense to me as I've gone through my life. So I'm not saying that it looks to me like that's the only way we get to survive on this planet, is if we cultivate those things. And maybe I'm not right, but whether or not I'm right, whether or not that's actually wisdom, if I had more years to be cultivating that, perhaps it would be able to show up in all different areas. And yet there are others on the planet who have very different ideas. And I think that death serves us to start clearing out the resistance to the adoption of new ideas. And I could be wrong, because certainly, there are people that perpetuate our ideas. That's one of the things that we do on the planet, is we share our perspectives, we share our beliefs, we train others into our way of thinking. And I just had this image of thought forms as kind of waves, ebbs and flows of energy on and over the planet, and that then human beings sort of adopt those or are influenced by those thought forms, that rather than us generating the thoughts, maybe we receive them. Maybe this evolution of belief is something that belief, ideals, values, morality, maturity, maybe whatever the notions of the way that those things manifest, maybe they exist and we receive them rather than we generate them. It's interesting, which comes first, the chicken or the egg. Is the consciousness generating those perspectives and then we're receiving them, or are we generating them? It's maybe it's both. Maybe as we receive them, we generate more, and it becomes this increasing spiral. So Elaine says there's no separation. All is one unified field operating and functioning simultaneously. All is within. What I see and experience is created and projected out by me for me on this beautiful journey, a walk to remember the one true self. There is only one. And so, Elaine, with that understanding that there is only one, what would it look like to be on this planet for you for thousands of years? What would it be like to be on this planet if everybody on this planet lived for thousands of years? What kinds of things would we experience? What would have to change? The people who are oppressed or feel oppressed, are they going to tolerate that for thousands of years? What's it going to look like? What would it look like? I just think this is a really interesting thought experiment to wonder if right now we had the technology to be able to live for thousands of years healthy in our physical bodies, in a perfected physical form. What would the world be like? What would our cultures be like? What would change? How would it change? How quickly would it change without death? What would that be? I just wonder, because I think that at this moment, at least in our evolution, death is kind of an essential thing. And the thing is that if there were such a technology, probably it would be available only to the elite. And what's the agenda and the consciousness of the elite? It's an interesting conversation, right? Just mind experiment. So Angelina says, yes, I used to be pretty terrified of death. Energy ebbs and flows. Yes, I was about to write something about that, but decided to just listen. I'm in complete agreement with you. Thank you, Angelina. It's fun, right? And so Elaine says, this is not an understanding, it's a knowing for me. So I'm not sure what, I know that the beingness is a knowing, that we are one, that there's only one. And if there's only one, we're still living in these individuated forms. And as these individuated forms, we are part of that illusion of separation in its way. And so Elaine says, death is a falling away of all that is not you. That makes sense to me. That I love that. That's beautiful. And what would it look like if all of humanity lived, it were immortal? What if every human being was immortal? What would that look like on our planet? Would that be a good thing? Would we evolve more quickly? Would we evolve more slowly? Would we have more wars? Would we have global peace? I think it's such an interesting concept, because there are still so many levels of consciousness at which we operate that are in no way sustainable. The conquest domination thing, not sustainable. We've taken that attitude to our planet, and have been raping and pillaging it for centuries, and no time more quickly than over the past 100 years. And so what happens to evolution of consciousness on this planet if we're immortal? I'm just wondering what you guys think, if we would evolve our consciousness and our awareness and our beingness more quickly, would there be a massive transformation of awareness, or would we be perpetuating the things that don't work, because the people that are holding those things would be here forever? So Rosalind says, when something is dying, the seeds of something new are born. Exactly. If I had a lifetime to dissolve bad habits and not be subject to emotional patterns, then what's left? Well, that's another really awesome question. What would we be able to create if we had cleared all those things that we were here to transcend and evolve through and from? That was a great question. So Angelina says, for me, I think the world would become stagnant. I don't think I would continue to enjoy life simply because it would become boring. I can imagine that it could become boring, or it could become even more interesting. We might get ourselves into more trouble, who knows, or we might create things that are currently unimagined, that have a harmony that we can't even conceive of. So Angelina continues, eventually things would become too predictable. The fact that life and experiences pass allows for us to experience life in the moment. It's hard to know what would happen. I was raised to believe all beings are made imperfect and that absolute power corrupts absolutely. However, who knows what would happen? Maybe humanity would surprise us. Yes, I mean, it's a fun thing to think about, right? So, to imagine, what would we be creating on the planet? What would our lives look like? What would our cultures look like? What would we be creating? What would we be conceiving of and conceptualizing? We're in this crazy race to try and replicate, or try and be God, with AI and traveling the cosmos and cloning and finding different ways to replicate life. I mean, we're really trying to be gods on this planet in so many ways. What would happen? Would we achieve that? Would it be boring? Would it be inspiring? Who knows? So Elaine says, all of humanity is immortal, all is eternal, and will know from within this truth when you choose it. Love, when you choose it, love, you are creator. Well, I'm not disagreeing with you on any level there, Elaine. I totally get what you're saying. And I'm talking about being manifest in this physical form eternally. What would that look like? Just for fun. And Angelina says the possibilities would be endless. Yes, because we would be conceiving of things that we haven't yet begun to imagine. I expect that that's so. I just thought it would be a fun conversation, and I'm so grateful to you all for contributing to it and engaging in this thought experiment, just to imagine what the possibilities might be, maybe get a different look at or a different perspective on humanity and what it is for us, how we participate in it. So I think I'm going to call it a morning. That's it for this morning. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here each weekday morning on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page. So please join us. And if you enjoyed this conversation, share it out so that we can grow our collective community and have even more engaging conversations. I so appreciate and enjoy this time with you guys. I can't even say. Angelina says, Dido, I'm so glad to hear that you're here with us. Thank you for chiming in. And Elaine says, so choose it as experience and see. So choose to know that we are immortal and see what shifts for us, Elaine says, essentially. And you are so welcome, Dido. And Angelina says, it totally is fun. I was sort of feeling into the resistance of why I would not like that. LOL. Thank you for the fun thought experiment. Rosalind says, we would operate on the economy of love. And wouldn't that be a beautiful, beautiful thing? So with that, please check out the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network, EWN One with the Earth, Enlightened World Network itself, Enlightened World Living. And Elaine says, that is how it would be when we wake up and remember you create your reality. And on that note, thank you all. And until next time, so much love.